Welcome back to another exciting episode of Light Vision Art Q&A. I'm your humble host, Alfonso Ashworth, and we got a great show lined up for you today. Whether you're listening live or whether you look at this video at some later date, we want to add to your knowledge. We're going to be talking about, of course, prime time. We're going to be talking about prime lenses, something that you may not be familiar with. You may hear the term fixed focal length lenses. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in relationship to using zoom lenses. This is not a show. This episode is not about bashing one versus the other. We just want to bring you some knowledge and discuss it. I already have Christopher E. Hamrick in the queue. We'll have him on in a bit. We'll also have Claudia Richardson. She's already jumped in. I see her chiming in. We're going to, of course, bring her into the conversation in just a little bit. But I'm sure that she can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, Claudia. Yep, she hears me. I see her in. And of course, we may have Jeff Coleman. He may come in. He is a regular on the show as well. We're going to be talking about this in depth just for this hour. But of course, if you would like to be a part of the show, you can call in at 615-547-3355 or simply email me at lightvisionart@gmail.com, and we will get you into the program one way or another. Of course, if you look at this live on our YouTube channel, you can also communicate by asking questions. We know it's early, but of course, we're going to get started with class. Let's get the bell ringing. Oops, not the bell. There you go. Play the bell. We're ringing for class. Class has started. Okay, let's bring Claudia back up right quick. Hey, Claudia, how you doing? Go ahead and click off.
Good morning. Good to
morning.
be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, glad to have you on. And of course, I know you have some information you want to share later. But
Morning,
of course,
Christopher.
yeah, Christopher's in. Let's bring Christopher up real quick. Hey, Christopher, how's it going, big guy?
I'm here.
Yeah, it's Saturday morning, and we're live, of course, on air on Light Vision Art Q&A. These are my fast. I call them my panelists. Of course, they're professional photographers. They do a lot of work. There's Jeff. Welcome, Jeff. How you doing today? Jeff's getting his gear ready, I ask a lot of people when they get up early. Saturday mornings are tough for some people. Of course, I've been getting up early for Saturday mornings since forever, since my days of looking at Bugs Bunny cartoons or something, probably. But I'm just an early bird. Of course, we appreciate them coming out and taking part of the programming. Of course, let's talk about what we do. Okay, you can find us, of course, at Light Vision Art Q&A. You can find us on Saturday mornings. Claudia, mute your mic for me, please. You can find us on Saturday mornings from 10 to 11 on the Q&A here. Of course, that's me and my ugly mug, and on Saturday mornings, of course. And also, you can find us in the dark room. Anytime you see that sign, dark room in use, that pretty much means that we are broadcasting or that we are doing something with photography. Of course, if you would like to find me during the weekdays, you can find me on Line Chasers Radio with Lonnie Poindexter. This is a comprehensive show. It talks about a lot of the issues, but we're on daily, and you can find me on Wednesdays or even some other days on his show as his guest host. But check us out there. And of course, find me in the classroom, Light Vision Art, the Educated Eye. We do a 16-week class. We do private classes. And of course, you can see my ugly mug in the classroom itself. And if you need good lenses, high quality Canon lenses, We recommend you use webelenses.com. That's webelenses.com with Jim and Marion Young. They will get your lenses to you quickly and at a reasonable rate. Also, web pages. You can find our websites. If you want to be a part of a motley crew, you can visit us at our guild meetings, Wilson County Photography Guild. We meet the first Mondays of the month. This next month, on October the 3rd, we will be at the Mount Juliet Corner Pub between the lakes. You can come there 6:30. We meet at 6:30 p.m. Come early enough to get food. We got a lot going on. Oktoberfest is getting ready to roll around the corner. We're in charge of that. We also have a large variety of different types of photographers that you can meet and have conversations with. Of course, you can also find my website, Light Vision Art. Go there, The Educated Eye, lightvisionart.simdiff.com. You go there, you can get all sorts of information on my website, broadcast information, video tips, all sorts of tips and things that you can use as well. And I want to advertise Christopher E. Hamrick and his website. Go to ChristopherEHamrick.com and you can visit him. You can see some of his work, some of the things that he has discussed on the show, and maybe get some tricks and tips from Christopher and stay in touch with Chris. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. We're going to be talking about guys and gals. I'm going to leave Claudia out. She's a very important part of this show. I call her my co-producer is what I call her. She works behind the scenes. We're talking today about prime versus zoom lenses. And some people get confused when you use the word prime or, fixed focal length lenses. And today I'm seeing more and more people use zoom lenses. I don't criticize them. I have one. Matter of fact, I have one here, right here, this one right here, but it's a coffee mug. So that's my extent on using zoom lenses in my world. But I don't want to, criticize someone who chooses to do so, because they make some really good lenses out there today. But you're going to pay for them. You're going to pay out the nose, that's for sure. We're going to talk about zoom lenses, prime lenses. We're going to talk about perspective in terms of, when you're photographing people, which lenses should you use as far as the perspective? And this is a good example of that. One is a fixed length lens, wide angle, and then of course you got a fixed length lens that's what we call a telephoto. So we're going to talk about depth of field, perspective. We also want to discuss in terms of shooting scenery, using the right perspective. Of course, the one up on the upper left is a 14 millimeter or 28 millimeter for some. And then you have 25 millimeter or 50 millimeter perspectives all the way to telephoto. So we're going to discuss that. I'm going to get my crew out. As you can see, a wide perspective on this young lady here, 16 millimeter, how it distorts her facial features. And today, there's ways people try to correct this in programs like Photoshop and some of the other aspects of doing that. But it also, you cannot really change the way the image appears as far as depth of field, some of those sort of things and tips. All right, let's get my crew in here. Let's bring up, everybody just turn your mics on. Let's get started talking about this. Let's start with you, Christopher. Because you're very familiar with this in terms of, because you've done lots of different types of photography in terms of people, objects, scenery, and some of the other types of photography. What is your preference? Do you prefer uh, one type of lens over another? Are you a prime user, or do you use both? Do you use both prime and um, uh, zoom?
I actually do use both. I'm a fan of primes because their quality is so much better. You will get it'll be sharper. Um, the zoom lens, they're good for an all-purpose lens. So if you're not a professional and you want something that gives you some flexibility, then having a zoom lens is in your kit is good. But if you're really getting down to like looking at all your pixels and trying to make sure they're the absolute sharpest, it's not going to be as sharp. But like you said, you can pay a lot of money for a really good engineered zoom lens, um, and it'll be, sharp at both ends of its focal length.
Right, right. But you're gonna pay for that. You're gonna pay for it.
You won't pay a lot for that.
Yeah, matter of fact, I've got a student. I've got a student in class at the moment, and she has a zoom lens, and it's a Tamron, and amazingly, um, it's supposed to be like a 100 to 300, but it doesn't zoom. It's actually something wrong with the lens. The internal mechanism somewhere has broken, because you can just physically grab the barrel and pull it in and pull it out. I mean, so, but she had no idea that it was not zooming. She just assumed that because she was turning the mechanisms that it was zooming, but she just couldn't see it. So that just shows you how lack of knowledge in some of these areas, people wind up with poor choices. Hey, Jeff, what do you think, sir? Because I know you use different lenses. And go ahead and unmute yourself. What do you think? We don't have your voice right now, Jeff. I don't know if you're not turned on, or we're not getting any sound for you, big guy. You may want to come back in. Try coming back and see if that'll help you. We're not getting any sound from you right now. Is the deal. But he's gonna come back. Claudia, unmute.
I'm here.
What do you prefer? I know.
Well, any given time, I'm out and about, and I do a lot of dog photography, mostly for the rescue, to get them posted online. Any given day, I have a zoom lens, like an 18 to 135, and a 28 millimeter 1.8. Those two I have in my camera bag all the time. I like them a lot, both of them.
You like them both?
Yes.
You don't have a preference, one over the other, or?
Usually it's that zoom lens that I use for most everything.
Right.
And when it gets dark now early, I like to use the 28 millimeter with the wide aperture.
Right.
To get extra light in. You
go to the prime. You go to your prime lens.
Yes.
Prime lenses, of course, when we use the word prime, we should be probably using the word fixed focal length. Yeah, because fixed focal length just means it's not a zoom. It's just going to be at one focal length. Now, you can zoom if you get up and move around.
Yeah, you're the zoom.
I tell people you become the zoom if you just get up and move about. The problem I see, and I think we got Jeff back. Let's see if we can get Jeff back on here and see if he's got sound. Do you have sound, Jeff?
Am I live yet?
Yeah, you're live, sir.
All
you're
right.
Live. Oh, let's get your what happened, Jeff?
Hey, we got a new person on the show today.
Oh, we do.
I missed a little bit what you were asking me about primes and telephotos. I have
I know you
I
have
have
both.
both, but mostly I mostly use telephoto because really a lot of type of stuff I do is outdoors, and I don't when I'm outdoors I don't really like changing lenses a lot, just because of the dust and dirt and things that get inside the lens. But um, I like when I went to Florida this last summer, I did use a really nice prime on that trip, and got some pretty good shots with it.
Right. Which prime did you use, by the way?
I did 85 Zeiss Batis,
Ah,
uh, and
1.8.
it takes some getting used to because of the shallow depth of field for it.
Right, right. Your focus has to be more critical when you
Right.
that 1.8 aperture. Of course, I got a 51.4 that I love. I use it on a regular basis. It's probably one of my favorite lenses. I had an image up here just a minute ago. Let me bring it back and see if we can get it again. If I'm not mistaken, that lens on the left is a L series 50 millimeter. That's what it looks like to me, guys. And the lens on the right. Anybody recognize that focal length? Is that 70 to 300 or 70 to 200? Not sure which one that
It
is.
looks like the 70 to 200, but I'm not a Canon shooter, so.
Yeah, and of course, Canon has a very wide variety when it comes to lenses. That's one of the reasons people sort of pick them. But nowadays, you have some third-party companies that are doing well, like you just mentioned, Carl Zeiss. Jeff just mentioned. I had another student. He purchased the 50 millimeter 1.2. I think it's a Carl Zeiss, and he loves that lens. And he stopped by here yesterday, and he's purchased another one. I think he got the 85 too, Jeff, that you just mentioned. But Christopher, when you set out to determine lens selection, and when we start talking about perspective, um, is what's important to you in terms of your perspective of that lens when you're shooting a certain subject? Why is that important?
The most important thing for me is to sharpness. The lower quality lens is going to not be as sharp, a little bit more blurry. I know I had a Nikon, it's like an 18 to 55 or something like that, and then I had another one that was a 55 to 200, and I thought I was covered, but those were $100 lenses, and they were just fuzzy.
Right.
So as I continued on learning about photography, I learned, um, quality in a lens is going to give you just really tack sharp images. There's a website I go to, DxO online or something like that. If you start to type in DxO, they actually take some of the newer lenses and rate them.
Right.
A very objective scale, and I want to see how well that lens is actually put together.
Right.
Before I purchase it.
Yeah. Used to, they would have a sheet or paper that would come with the lens. It was sort of like a inspection chart where the lens had actually been inspected, and you would get like a rating on that lens, and it would give you all that information as far as the testing of the lens. They don't really do that anymore that I'm familiar with, unless you go on some of these websites. It's hard to find out information because everybody has their favorite lens, and then they're going to brag on that lens, and then they're going to tell you it's the best. But until you put it under your own test, it's hard for you to do that. It's like an image like this that I'm showing here, Christopher. Perspective, and we talked about this a little bit, I think last week when we was talking about tilt and shift. You can see that this building appears to be falling away when you use a wide angle perspective and get closer. Of course, the closer you get, the more it seems to be tilting back. But if you use the correct perspective or use the correct focal length, you can the building looks more natural. And I think that's something people don't think about. They just think, well, I can fix that in Photoshop. And one of the things that I'm like this lens here, this is a tilt and shift lens. Now you can buy one or rent one. You can get them for Nikon, Canon, and you can actually buy adapters like we talked about before. But this lens here is a tilt shift lens that will help you with that problem that you may have when shooting a wide angle point of view, so that you can correct that angle. You know, that's my biggest pet peeve today, because a lot of photographers will get into shooting people like models and things of that nature. And not only do they not pose them correctly, but they'll do something where they'll put that person's feet out front, you know, and their feet look twice as large as their head. And, or they'll get up close to an animal. Claudia, I think's got some pictures she's going to show us later. Am I right, Claudia? Go ahead and talk.
Hey, I was muted.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I got some for you later.
Okay, so you're going to show us some that you've actually photographed yourself.
Yes.
Show some of this. And we're of course, we're excited about that. I can't wait to show them. They're really good. I've seen them. They're really good shots, by the way. I always try to brag. And I think Christopher has something on the screen that he wants to show us. And this is what I'm talking about. He's got something on his screen. Go ahead, Christopher.
Let me make this bigger, but yeah, this is where somebody used a wide angle lens. This is a stylistic way of shooting this. We've seen it with the the cow with the big nose,
Right,
and the tiny body. The same thing here, but when it gets into the fashion stuff, this is actually a friend of mine that did this, and I mean, she got a lot of people likes on this image, but to me it was like her hands are as big as her butt, just because
Right.
she used a wide angle lens, and so
Right.
she's got these really huge hands. Had she have gone with a longer focal length, then it wouldn't have looked so distorted like that. It wouldn't have looked so strange.
Christopher, I go with big hands any day.
Lord, I don't know where to go with that, Christopher. But in any case, what you get a lot of times is people call it a certain style. Like you just said, they'll use the term style. That's my style. But if you're going to make somebody's, look a certain way, you need to inform them. You need to let them know that what this image may or not appear, and because there's no way. Can you fix that image, Christopher? Can that be fixed?
No, that's not something you can fix. Like when I'm shooting, I'm worried about exposure and focus. And when you put a lens on there, then that's like having a certain type of paintbrush. You're not going to be able to adjust that in Photoshop. The perspective you could, where your buildings start to climb in, you can bring that into Photoshop and you can straighten that up. But for the most part, no, you're not gonna fix that.
Are you gonna lose any of the building when you try to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna actually crop part of your building to do that, and so you're still giving up something. Jeff, what do you think about the shot that Christopher just shared with us?
Yeah, if you were using that professionally, I wouldn't advise it, because it the customer might take offense to it, but it would be extremely hard to fix. You
Yeah.
step back and use like you said, a little longer focal length lens.
Right. That's what we're talking about, of course. If you're out there, you're listening or going to listen to the show, we're discussing prime versus zoom lenses, but we're also talking about perspective, choosing the correct perspective when you have a certain lens. And of course, Christopher just shared with us a very awkward looking pose with a young model that her hands look larger than her behind. And of course, Claudia made a joke about that. And I'm not sure if the joke came over like it should have. But of course, we try to be light on the show. We're trying to have fun while we're trying to talk about these subjects. But of course, we're trying to help you. So if you want to call in, if you got a person and you're out there and you have a question about this, call us at 615-547-3355, or you can let me email me at livevisionart@gmail.com. And I hear somebody back in the background. Who do you have with you today?
Joni's sitting in here running her mouth.
Okay. Joni,
I just said excellent comment, getting the guys to say nothing.
She liked Claudia's comment.
Oh, Claudia's comment. Claudia may not come back on air after that.
Hey, with liquefy and bloat, you might fix some of that.
Yeah, liquefy. Yeah, that's true. You could do some liquid methods and all that sort of thing. But of course, if you're out there and you want to be a part of us, you want to find out what we're doing, well, come to our guild meeting as we advertise the Wilson County Photography Guild. And don't forget about Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest in this area is huge. Matter of fact, it's huge all over the world. I think a lot of places do Oktoberfest. I think Claudia just come back from an Oktoberfest event with her company. And Claudia probably could tell us more about Oktoberfest than anybody. Claudia, what is Oktoberfest really about?
Oktoberfest is a celebration at the end of summer. It's what? At the end of summer, you celebrate harvest and those things as well. With a lot of beer and a lot of fun and fellowship.
Yeah. Well, there won't be any beer at our Oktoberfest. Wilson Bank and Trust does the Oktoberfest here, and they don't allow beer, but they still get a huge crowd. But we're looking forward to that, mainly because our photography guild is a part of that. We help with the photographs. And then the one cool thing about it, they donate money to our cause. So our money gets donated to the Tennessee School of the Blind. So if you want to help out with that, please do. You can donate to the cause. Every penny that we get from the Oktoberfest goes directly to the Tennessee School of the Blind, and it helps them with their situation. But of course, as I was saying, you can get in contact with us through our websites. You can find me at livevisionart.simdiff.com. And if you want to find Christopher E. Hamrick, you can go to his website as well. He's probably going to show us some images in a minute from his website. But this is his website at ChristopherEHamrick.com. In any case, we're having a show today about lenses. It's something we like to discuss, the things that we like to get into. We talked about the tilt and shift lens. We talked about also in terms of the lenses and perspective, how using a wide angle perspective. We also talked about it with shooting or photographing models or individuals, how you can really distort. Now, if you're looking for distortion, that's one thing. At least know what you're looking for. Don't shoot something like this and then have to work on it for 2 hours in Photoshop trying to fix it. So get your right lens perspective, whether that be wide angle, mid-range, 50 millimeters, or telephoto. And also, here's another example of the wrong perspective. But in any case, zoom lenses versus prime. I will tell you this, prime lenses are worth their money if you can afford them. But I'm seeing a trend to use a term that's on social media, I'm seeing a trend where zoom lenses are costing more than the prime lenses. I just recently had someone tell me that their husband purchased them a lens, a zoom lens, and it's a third party lens, and she said her husband told her that he paid $3,000 for it. Um, and I think I find that hard to believe. I think the husband was like padding the numbers to get some favors or something. I don't know, but any case, well, Christopher, you got something you want to show us?
Yeah, I figure I just put this one up. This is from a view camera I did many years ago, and it was a 135 millimeter lens, but it's on a 4x5 camera, so that would be essentially the equivalent on a 35 millimeter camera being about 35 millimeters in its focal length. And so one of the things that you can do with a view camera is your buildings would actually start to go to a point, as we saw in your images. But in this image, they're going straight up. This is a film scan, direct scan, and all I removed was dust. So you can raise on a view camera, you can actually raise the lens and it will straighten your buildings. And on the back of the ground glass, there's actually lines on there so that you can get everything lined up. But even with the old film, I mean, this, I think somebody said it was the equivalent of a 109 megapixel camera.
Right.
So the actual original image, the TIFF, when you're looking at this wide angle, you can actually see pictures hanging on people's walls across the way.
Wow.
Because of the quality of the lens, because of how much information is being collected on that piece of film. To me, I love shooting large format just because it's, something that, a lot of people aren't doing.
Right.
But to get that detail in there is a whole other, thing to try to, as far as the quality in the lens itself.
But you can definitely see the quality in the film compared to the digital world we live in. Like you just said, the equivalent that would relate to on 35 millimeter or 135 really is what it's called. It would be what 109 megapixels, as you just said, of information. Well, we don't have cameras at our disposal that's shooting 109 megapixels.
I think the Hasselblad is now, they've got a new one that came out that's 75. So
yeah, they're getting there.
Format, we're almost there.
But it's still got a ways to go when you're talking about shooting large format, medium format versus what we have at our disposal today. We're still falling far short of that. Look, if you're shooting 30 megapixels, I mean, you got a ways to go to catch up to something like a 4x5 size format, 4-inch by 5-inch. And that was that what you were shooting, Chris?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had one myself, loaned it out, and I've never seen it again. So, and I still miss that camera because I had a lot of accessories and attachments for it. Like you was talking about the ground glass, I had the range finder. I had all that information, had a Polaroid back, had all that stuff that we could use to get the maximum out of our images. When we use that camera, they're not something you use every day anyway, unless you're doing a lot of commercial work. All right, Jeff, what's happening, big guy? Where's your brain? What's going on?
Sitting here going through pictures.
Yeah, going through some pictures.
I'll show one of my favorites. I took over if I can get my thing working here. This is it's like the quality is insane. You can't tell it on this photo or on this thing, but
right.
This is taken with that Zeiss and the fall off. It's immediately falling off of the girl's eyes and things, but her jaw is completely starting to fall out of focus. But
Right.
tack sharp, you can see every dimple, every blemish, everything, on her skin and everything. But so,
Right.
the
Right.
amount of detail you pick up with a good quality prime it is insane.
Yeah. There is no doubt, and anybody that wants to argue any different, they really have not tested the images comparative wise. And you have another one right here, Jeff, that you
Same thing. I mean, it just, you get in and you start looking at the quality that come out of that, off that lens, and it just insane. But here's another one that you just hit on. This is a 14 millimeter prime, and you can say the tilt, and I mean, this lens is really, really wide, and I always have to go in and do some kind of correction on it because everything really looks funky, but it's fun to play with. Claudia, like when I shot with this lens, I can't find it right now, but I shot a small dog up real close.
Right.
And it gives that weird look. I wish I could find it, but I've got so many pictures, I can't ever find anything.
Right. Well, that look is fine. That look is good if that's what you're shooting for.
Yeah.
That distorted, out of proportion look. But if you're not looking for that and you get it, then you're going to be, up a creek. And in a minute, of course, I want to bring Claudia on with her tip, because she got some images she wants to show us. And I want to talk about that. And set us up, Claudia. What is it that you're wanting to do?
What's she whispering?
She's back in the Joni's back there whispering. Tell her we can hear her.
Well, first of all, hey, thank you, because I was downtown Nashville and I have building pictures, and now I know why they're leaning a little bit. And learned that today. So it's always great to be on a show. Thanks for that. But I was going to show you some pictures I took with my first prime lens, which was that 50 millimeter. And I wanted to add that on a cropped sensor, it's actually got it multiplied by 1.6. So the 50 is actually about 80 millimeter.
Okay.
So that's, for everybody.
Christopher is leaning way back because I know what he's going to say. Go ahead, dude. Just quickly, Christopher, enlighten us on that fact of the crop ratio. What is actually happening right there?
You're just losing some of the image. That's it. It doesn't change the distortion. So if you have, say, a 50 and you're thinking it's shooting like an 85, shoot it against an 85, and you'll see that it's the distortion's not the same. It's a crop sensor. You just have less sensor. And so what they've sold it as look, it's almost like, if you have this 300 millimeter lens, you're actually getting like 450 it's 300 millimeters just with less
of it.
And in a lot of the cases, though, you're hitting a sweeter part of the lens too. So.
Yeah, you are getting what they call a sweet spot. But as he just instructed us, you're really not getting an 85. You're getting a cropped 50.
Gotcha.
But go ahead and finish though, Claudia, because I know you got some great shots here. I'm looking at one of them now.
Yeah. So this was actually, on 1.8. This dog was in a very, very dark dog house. Didn't want to come out, but we needed pictures for the rescue. And that's what this lens gives you. It adds so much light that you think, daylight was shining in this doghouse.
Right.
And I was not able to do this with my regular lens at 3.5.
Right.
So we got this dog, and it's looking like pretty good daylight. It was probably 7 o'clock at night in the fall.
Right. And what was your settings? Do you remember?
It was 6400 ISO in the 50th of a second.
Okay, so you bumped that ISO up to get
because it was really dark already.
Okay, very good. As you can see, the depth of field is still there. because you did it at 1.8, as you said. So you still got that nice depth of field, that blurred background that you're looking for. Now we're going to show this next one, and this one is at a different, of course, with a different lens, if I'm correct.
No, it's the same lens.
Oh, okay. So
I just wanted to show, how much light I mean, I should have taken the picture how dark it really was.
Right.
It was dark. I could barely see the dog myself.
Okay.
But that's what the lens gives you at a 1.8 aperture. So much extra light.
So much more light.
Yeah.
It's almost like having, I compare it to having a hose pipe, where it's, the same on each end. And you're going to get the same volume coming out as you get in. But if you put a restrictor on it, or if you put something smaller at one end, you're not going to get the same water. You're going to get more pressure, but you won't get the same volume. But in any case, what's this next shot right here?
Here's one where I wanted to show, just like Jeff had earlier with the little girl, how you get the eyes in focus and everything falls off and it's blurry, which you can't do with a regular kit lens. This was taken at 1.8 as well. Mm-hmm. And I just like when the eyes are in focus and the rest gets very soft.
And what's that setting again? What's the setting?
That was a ISO 800, and it was 1,000th of a second.
1,000th of a second.
Uh-huh.
And what's the depth? What's the F number?
1.8.
1.8. And the depth of field, you kept it pretty good. I mean, it's like, and one trick that you can do, and a lot of people don't think about this, if you have a shallow depth of field, if you're using like a wide aperture, you have to understand how depth of field works, because you have an equal amount. They're not the same, but you have an equal amount of depth of field in front of the focus point and behind the focus point. So what you want to do, if you're having trouble getting something to be focused between two subjects, you focus between those subjects and narrow that depth of field. That way it appears that they're both in focus. But most people will focus on one subject, say two people. Say if you got two people and one standing behind the person and you're using a 1.8 aperture, you're going to have somebody it's going to be blurred. You're just not going to be able to get around that. But in any case, let's go to your next shot that you wanted to show us. And what's this right here?
So here is the one. Can you show the other one first?
Yeah.
And then go back to this one.
Okay.
This is from the same position. This is with the 50 millimeter. That was my first prime lens that I bought. Okay. And I always ran into problems not having enough things on my picture. I'm missing a lot on the left and the right when I'm taking dog pictures indoors. Right. I have to, on people's houses, I'm glued to the back wall just trying to get this dog in the picture. Can't move any further. And, a little bit of the tail of the back end was cut off.
Right.
And that's with the crop sensor thank you, Chris, for explaining this better to me. That's why I went out and bought that 28 millimeter. And if you show now this other picture, you get so much more in the frame with the aperture that you need, like for indoor, and get all the light you can get on the sensor. That's why I bought that second prime lens, the 28 millimeter. So I get my dogs indoors on the frame, in the frame.
So you're having the best of both worlds in respect of light, getting enough light, and because you're dealing with a crop sensor. We may do a show about crop sensors, because it is very confusing to the average person when they purchase a camera, and they may hear the term APS size sensor, and they don't really know where that come from. And then they hear the term cropped sensor, and then they wondering, what does that mean, cropped sensor? Then they'll hear the term full frame sensor. Then they don't understand why the difference in the cost. and because they're assuming that one sensor is just as good as the other, but what they're not realizing, if you got more surface to work with, as Christopher just stated, if I'm dealing with a 4-inch by 5-inch surface, I have more information to work with versus if I'm dealing with a 135 millimeter surface, which a lot of people are familiar with what they call 35 millimeter cameras, where your full frame sensors and your digital SLRs are supposed to be equivalent or close to what we call a 135 millimeter, like you would have had in your film days. This is why the difference in the cameras. And Jeff is showing us here. Now, what size sensor is this, Jeff?
That's a full frame.
That's a full frame sensor.
So
Do you
kind of look at that?
Yeah, I can see it. Do you have another to show up the crop one?
And I'm gonna show you a crop one. Yeah.
Okay. Now, can
Same,
you hold
the lens? What now?
Could you hold the other one up side by side and see if we can get a comparison? Because I think that's very important. And as you can see, just by holding these two up, that one is definitely smaller. If you can't see that, then you need to go get some glasses. But one is smaller than the other. You got more sensor to work with. Now imagine that you had a 4-inch by 5-inch.
Yeah.
Christopher, jump in, add to that conversation, big guy.
I think the one thing I wanted to make sure people understood before we got out of here was that our eyes are about a 50 millimeter.
Yeah, 55.
And the aperture is, I think, 2.8 to 8 something, to give you an idea. So when you're stopping your stuff down to f/22 or something, that's something that your eyeball can't do. And its widest is going to be, I think it's about 2.5, or from what I had researched years ago. Yeah, it's I don't shoot anybody unless I'm going for maybe a stylistic thing, which has been never. I don't shoot anybody below a 50 millimeter, just because that's what our eyes, it's what you're used to seeing people. When I shoot people, it's around 100, 135, somewhere around there, because they just look better when you compress them.
Right.
At least that's my opinion. But when you look at some people's faces, they need to be compressed.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, you just hit one of the key points. We see in a 55 millimeter perspective. So the world you see around you, I mean, not everybody, because some people's eyes are, maybe something a little bit different than others. But on average, as you just stated, 50 to 55 millimeter is your perspective. Years ago, they made a 55 millimeter for your 135. And that was a perspective that you would expect to see how it looked. Nowadays, when you get a 50 millimeter on your full frame sensor, it looks slightly, just a little bit on the wide side if you look closely. So as you just said, Christopher, it's good if you can shoot that 85 millimeter or that 100 millimeter or somewhere in that neighborhood. And I've got a matter of fact, I got a 100 millimeter 2.8 that I love. That's a macro. It's a great lens. Then I have my 85 millimeter 1.8 for what they call that a portrait lens. If you hear most professionals say use a portrait lens, they're talking 85 millimeter, as Christopher just said. 55, then 50. And then if you need that wide angle perspective, then you reaching outside the scope of your visible range without panning your head left or right. So any case, and I think Christopher has something else on the screen that he wants to share here.
It's another thing about lenses, people, I'll see they'll try to get like 100 or 200 at a 2.8 or something really small. And when you're doing a zoom lens, your background's going to be nice and blurry anyway. Right. Where you get character is when you have when you're right there in the middle, say about it, this is a 50 millimeter, it's a 1.2 lens, and very quickly the background goes out of focus and it just has character. It's not perfect, but it just has a look that people enjoy because somebody stole that picture and I sued them for it. But, same lens here. There was cotton right behind it, and it's just out of focus, and it's beautiful. And you can get that with, a wide or a longer focal length. If you had 135 or something and shot that same thing, you can get it. It'll be blurry, and it doesn't have to be at a 1.2, 1.418. It could be at a 4 or 5, 6, just because of how quickly the background's going to go out just on a larger focal length. So that's another way they try to get you. I've got a lens over here that's a f4, and they came out with a f2.8, I think. Essentially the same lens, but it cost as much as my car.
Right. Well, Claudia, let's wrap up what you come up with your shots. What do you think now going forward when you start talking about lens perspective and shooting buildings or people or animals, and how's that going to affect you now going forward?
I think I still have my 2 lenses in my bag that I've been using.
Yeah. So, because you're very comfortable with those lenses and they suit your style. And I think people should. I think that's, look, you got to decide for yourself. Do you want big hands or a big butt? You just have to make that decision, Claudia. Big hands or big butts? I mean, no.
Yes, as long as I stick with the dogs, I think I know with what I have.
Yeah, just be safe. What about you, Jeff? What do you think in this topic as far as overall lenses and how you would go forward?
Hey, whatever you're comfortable with, really. I mean, if you're getting out of your, if what you see makes you happy, then that's good. I mean, I think it depends on, how further you go into a professional range. If you're doing portraits, I think if you're doing portraits for people, you're gonna, if people are paying for it, you want to get I would anyways want to get the best equipment as you can.
Yeah.
So. Well, I just ordered me a new prime lens, so I'm gonna wait and see how it turns out. I just ordered a new 90 millimeters, so I'm excited to see how it's gonna shoot.
Yeah, that's another focal length that at one time you saw quite often was 90 millimeter. You don't see that nowadays. Evidently, they're bringing some of these focal lengths back. I wish they bring back the 55 as a standard.
It's got a 55. You just in fact, the 55 Sony gets bounced off, and when Chris was talking about the DxO standards, they bounce that off of some high-end Zeiss lenses, and it keeps it holds its own right up there with it.
Right.
With them.
Right. And Sony's doing a lot of great things, man. You can't deny what they've been able to do here recently, and they're almost running away with some of the other manufacturers. They're sort of surpassing them and sort of going out and getting out front. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the future. And as you just said, and what Chris said, and what Claudia just said, you just have to find your own comfort zone.
Yep.
But you're going to get what you pay for with lenses. I've been around this thing way too long. The mounts, I see so many people with plastic mounts on their lenses, and then they're wondering why they're not sharp, even though the camera says they're in focus. I see so many people with worn out lenses, that especially zoom lenses, because that's the only one they'll use. That's all they use is that one. And they zoom in and out and zoom in and out. Well, it's wear and tear. It just has to happen. Just like a car. I wish I never had to have brakes put on my car. I wish I never had to have an alignment. I wish I never had to have my front end repaired on my vehicle. But the more you drive, the more potholes you hit, the more traffic you stop in, you're going to have all three of those things have to be done. You got to change your tires. So lenses are no different. So for me, less is better. The less I have to move, the less I have to do mechanically, then I'm going to be happier because I've got lenses that I've had for years that are still good. It's as far as the look, it may be some scratches and dings. Speaking of scratches and dings, Claudia, what happened to you yesterday?
Just a little I got rear-ended at the traffic light.
Right.
I'm okay.
He's good.
Car a little cool.
Yeah, you're good. You don't have a whiplash today?
No.
I told you.
I'm good.
You're supposed to have a whiplash today.
Well, I wake up, I'm a little stiff, but I don't think it had to do with anything.
Yeah, so somebody bumped into you, but luckily no one was hurt and the vehicles will get fixed. But anyway, thank you guys. Everybody go ahead and go on mute for me. We're going to wrap this thing up. As usual, and you know what? I really appreciate my crew that comes on. We have fun on the show. And if people glean from this, that's great. If they can get some information that they can use, whether it be about prime lenses, zoom lenses, tilt and shift lenses, sensors, all of that goes into the better quality. But none of it matters if your images are not turning out the way you saw them. And what I mean, the way you saw them up here. If they're not coming out the way you saw them up here, then the equipment is not going to fix that. That's something you have to fix. And that's the artistic thing that we talk about. The painting with light, types and qualities of light, using a flash, something I call a necessary evil, by the way. I despise flash, but I do have to use it from time to time. But as Claudia just demonstrated, if you got the right lens with the right aperture, you can capture light that you really can't see, as Christopher stated. We can't see, our apertures will only open to about 2.8. But if you got a 1.8 aperture lens or 1.4 or 1.2, you can capture light that you couldn't see. And as Jeff just stated, it's all about what you see and what you like. So, of course, we want people to enjoy photography. I want you to get out there, get about, buy those lenses and cameras that you can afford to put that money into. But at the end of the day, I have a rule, and it says everything that you buy that has to do with photography is going to eventually cost you $200. I don't care what it is. That filter, that strobe, that grip, or whatever you buy is going to eventually cost you $200 somewhere down the road. So budget that into what you do. But no matter what, we want you to have fun. And of course, Light Vision Art Q&A is part of a brand, Custom Color Photo Lab. And of course, I want to thank you for coming out and listening to us if you're out there. If not, if you view us later, you can also find us on this show weekly on Saturday mornings from 10 to 11. And Christopher, thank you, sir. Claudia, thank you. And Jeff, thank you. And peace.